Meghan Markle has revealed the personal piece of advice that Prince Harry gave her to help get through really hard days. The Duchess of Sussex, 44, attended a special screening of Cookie Queens, a documentary about Girl Scouts, which Meghan and Harry executive produced, at AMC The Grove in Los Angeles on Tuesday. July 28, the mom of two was asked during a Q&A attended by people about how she motivates herself when having tough moments, and said she thinks back to a positive quote her husband told her ages ago. "I think so much of it, funny enough, I was thinking about something my husband told me ages ago, because we all go through experiences and life is full of surprises," Meghan said. "But you know, he was a helicopter pilot in the British Army for 10 years. And sometimes on really hard days we were once," he said, "hey, but my love, you know, even if there's a storm happening above the storm, the sun's always shining." Meghan added that Harry's perspective only comes when you think about zooming out a little. "So I think when you really zoom out and think, my gosh, how many things have we gone through that have felt hard? And then you still get through them," Meghan continued. "Or how many goals do you think you're not gonna hit, and then you hit them and you supersede them?" Meghan said it is important to maintain the perspective that no matter what feels insurmountable, there's just always that sun shining above it. Last year, Harry, 41, also opened up about the 5 words of advice from Meghan that he'll always fall back on. The Duke of Sussex reflected on his 2025 visit to the In an interview with The Guardian, including the valued advice he received from his wife, she said, "Just stick to the truth. It is the thing I always fall back on." Always, Harry said, recounting that Meghan told him that it's the most efficient way to live. "And if you think like that, who would be stupid enough to lie? It takes up too much time and effort," he added. The couple and their 2 children, Prince Archie, 7, and Princess Lilibet, 5, recently returned to the UK, with Meghan sharing a rare glimpse inside the trip, which included a stop at Althorp, Princess Diana's childhood home. The Duchess shared a collection of photos on Instagram on Thursday, July 23, captioned, "Summer Holiday." One image shows Harry with Archie and Lilibet from behind as they walk down a grassy path lined with trees and hedges. This photo is believed to have been taken at Althorp, the Spencer family's ancestral estate where Diana grew up. They stayed at the 13,000-acre Northamptonshire estate as guests of Harry's uncle, Charles Spencer. She left behind a successful acting career, gave up her independence, navigated one of the most scrutinized royal entrances in modern memory, and yet, by her own account, the person who kept her going through the darkest moments wasn't a therapist, wasn't a friend from her former life in Los Angeles, and certainly wasn't anyone inside Buckingham Palace. It was the man she married. And what Prince Harry told her, the actual words, the private counsel he shared on what Meghan herself has described as really hard days, has now made its way into the public conversation in a way that reveals far more about their marriage, and about the institution they left behind than most people expected. To understand why this revelation matters so much, you have to go back to the beginning. When Meghan Markle stepped into Harry's world in 2016, she was already a woman of considerable substance. She had built a career on her own terms, run a lifestyle blog called The Tig, advocated for gender equality at the United Nations, and carried herself with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from having worked hard for everything you have. She was not a naive ingenue walking into a fairy tale. She knew, at least intellectually, what she was taking on. But knowing something intellectually and living it are 2 very different things. Sources close to the couple have indicated that the early months of Meghan's integration into royal life were far more isolating than anyone on the outside could have imagined. The protocols were relentless. The media scrutiny was immediate and, by many accounts, vicious in a way that felt targeted. Palace insiders have previously noted that there was very little formal support offered to new members of the family. No structured introduction, no real framework for navigating the press, no safe person to turn to within the institution. You were simply expected to absorb it all and perform flawlessly, because that is what the institution demands. Harry, of course, had lived inside that institution his entire life. He had watched it from the inside at its most brutal. He lost his mother to a car crash in a Paris tunnel while she was being chased by photographers, and he has spoken openly in the years since about how that loss shaped his understanding of what the press was capable of and what the palace was willing to tolerate. He understood the machinery in a way Meghan never could from the outside. And according to reports that have emerged in the time since their departure from royal duties, that understanding became one of the most important things he offered her. The tension that built during those years between 2017 and 2020 was not simply personal. It was institutional. On one side, there was an ancient and deeply cautious monarchy trying to manage a narrative it had never quite encountered before, a biracial American woman, a feminist, someone with her own voice and her own platform who was not inclined to simply smile and stay silent. On the other side, there were 2 people trying to hold their marriage together under conditions that, by any reasonable measure, would have broken most couples entirely. Reports suggest that the couple's private conversations during this period took on an urgency that outsiders rarely appreciate. When you're living in a situation where your mental health is deteriorating, where you feel unsupported by the very people who are supposed to be your family, where you are watching your husband torn between his loyalty to his birth family and his commitment to you, those conversations become lifelines. And palace whispers that have filtered out over the years indicate that Harry was, at his core, fiercely protective of Meghan in a way that even some of his closest friends had not anticipated. What sources indicate Harry told Meghan, and what she has since spoken about publicly, was not complicated advice. It was not a strategy or a media plan. It was deeply personal, rooted in his own experience of surviving unbearable pressure. He reportedly told her that on the worst days, the only thing you can control is what you do in the next hour. Not the next year, not the narrative, not what the tabloids are going to write tomorrow morning. Just the next hour. Get through the hour in front of you. That was the counsel. That was what kept her moving. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But consider the context. This was not advice delivered by someone who had read about royal pressure in a book. This was advice from a man who, as a 12-year-old boy, had walked behind his mother's coffin in front of the entire world. A man who had spent his 20s fighting his way out of a grief he was never properly allowed to process because the institution around him did not permit it. When Harry said those words to Meghan, they carried the full weight of everything he had survived. And according to accounts from people who know the couple well, Meghan understood that. She received it not as a platitude, but as hard-won wisdom passed from one person who had been through the fire to another who was currently inside it. The moment this advice became public knowledge shifted something in the conversation around the Sussexes. Because what it reveals, quietly, without fanfare, is that the couple's relationship is not the performance of unity that their critics have always suspected. The cynical reading of Harry and Meghan has always been that they are two attention seekers who leverage their royal connections for personal gain and then position themselves as victims when the press pushed back. But the specificity of what Meghan has shared and the emotional texture of it does not read like performance. It reads like the account of two people who genuinely sustained each other through something genuinely difficult. Reactions to the revelation have been predictably divided. In certain corners of the British press, the response has been skepticism. The familiar argument that everything the Sussexes share publicly is carefully managed, that every disclosure is strategic rather than genuine. Royal commentators who have long been critical of the couple were quick to point out that Harry's advice, however touching, is being shared at a moment when Meghan's public profile is once again on the rise, with new projects drawing attention on both sides of the Atlantic. The timing, these critics argue, is never accidental with the Sussexes, but there is another reading. And it is one that a growing number of observers, including some who have been quite measured in their assessment of the couple over the years, are now taking seriously, which is that Meghan Markle is a woman who went through something genuinely harrowing inside one of the world's most powerful and most opaque institutions, and that she is now, carefully and deliberately, in the process of telling her own story on her own terms. The advice Harry gave her is part of that story. It humanizes him, it contextualizes the marriage, and it reframes the question that has always hung over the couple: not why did they leave, but how did they survive long enough to leave.